We begin this second hour of the program by heading over to Calgary, where we find Rahim Mohammed, a freelance writer. You see him often in the National Post and other places, and he's on the line. Rahim, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been far too long.
It has been far too long, and I'll just say this. I have lots of family in Calgary, so eventually I'm going to make my way to Calgary. And aside from the family, you're my favorite Calgarian. I can put that forward.
Appreciate that. That's high praise.
So, Rahim, let me tell you, before I get to your story, because you just took a look at interfaith relations in Canada, I'm going to start off with a little tidbit from my life. In a previous life, I was on a morning show TV program, right? Breakfast television in Montreal. And there was one morning where I had the opportunity to host, as a fill-in. And that morning, we had a live interfaith discussion on air, right? And, so we had a member of the Jewish community, Muslim community, Hindu community. I imagine it worked out that I was hosting because I represented the agnostics and atheists out there, right? So it was a big interfaith, multi-faith discussion. And I remember at that time, just thinking about how it was all kumbaya. And I was like, wow, everyone at this table talks a great game about how everyone can just get along. Now we have what happened 6 months ago on October 7th, right? The terror attack that happened that killed over 1,100 innocent civilians. 250 people were taken hostage. There were 8 Canadians involved in that onslaught. And 6 months later, you take a look at interfaith relations for the Aristotle Foundation for Public Policy. What did you find?
Sure. So I'll say, as you mentioned in the past, Canada has had generally cordial interfaith relations. And I think one strong indicator of that is whenever there has been a major act of religious hatred resulting in loss of life, you've seen faith groups across the board come together to condemn religious hatred, religious bigotry. So 2 examples that come up in the study are the Quebec City mosque shooting in 2017 and the truck attack in London, Ontario a few years back, in which a Pakistani Canadian family was targeted. So you had Jewish organizations as well as other faith-based organizations from across the board come out and say, we condemn all acts of anti-Muslim violence, all acts of Islamophobia. We stand with the Muslim community, which is positive, which is how things ought to be. It's in any if that happens to any faith-based community in Canada, you would hope to see that. But following October the 7th, we haven't seen quite the same level of solidarity with the Jewish community. So I will concede that October the 7th obviously happened on foreign soil, but at the same time, 8 Canadians were affected directly, including people who were working in development or in Israel-Palestinian relations in Gaza and doing work toward the peace process, and a number of young people. And you also had several more who lost family members in the attacks in southern Israel. And we've seen, from what I've been able to gather, silence for the most part on the part of Muslim organizations here in Canada, either saying nothing at all or immediately framing October the 7th as an act of resistance, a justified one as part of the Palestinian as part of an effort to free Palestine.
So if that's the case, right, if there's an open debate as to whether or not this attack was justified, I guess that explains it, why there's been a lack of interfaith kumbaya on this one.
Yeah, again, like I said, it also took place on foreign soil. But, I will say, none of the Canadians who were attacked, I think, or who were killed in any credible way, were part of any oppressive, other than simply being in southern Israel, took part in any oppression against Palestinians. I mean, they were young people who were there for that festival, and as I said, the number of people who were actively involved in the peace process and actively did developmental work in Gaza. So even if there is a more complicated political dynamic at play, there should at least, I think, be a recognition of the innocent Canadians who were targeted that day because of their faith and the pain that's caused to their families here in Canada.
Is this a failure of leadership? And when I ask that question, maybe you can, if you think there's a failure of leadership, where's that failure happening? Is it political or spiritual? Where would you point the finger here?
So I would say, first and foremost, it's within, unfortunately, within pockets of the Muslim community. So it's not just people on the street; it's leadership of the National Council of Canadian Muslims, the Muslim Association of Canada, these prominent groups that, you look at the other side of the coin. You look at groups like B'nai B'rith, CIJA. They each issued prompt, clear condemnations following Quebec City, following the London, Ontario truck attack. Anti-Muslim violence, Islamophobia has no place in Canada. We stand with our Muslim brothers and sisters. For whatever reason, that hasn't been reciprocated. And I think you do have to point a finger at leadership of Muslim organizations in Canada.
We're with Rahim Mohammed, a freelance writer based in Calgary. Recently took a look at interfaith relations in this country since October 7th for the Aristotle Foundation for Public Policy. Rahim, we've seen it on the streets. It seems like every weekend in this country there's something happening on the streets, a protest, a quote-unquote pro-Palestinian protest, and it seems like those relations, they're not getting better. They say time heals all wounds. Doesn't feel like it's getting better. It feels like it's getting worse here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So I think things that happened early on, things that happened in October, we didn't deal with them then, and I think that's emboldened some of the more disruptive segments of the protesters. So I think I'll give you an example. In February, in Montreal, in your backyard, Adil Shawkawi, a Montreal imam, gave a public sermon calling for God, I believe, to exterminate all of the Zionist aggressors. Why that was not met by blanket condemnations from every Muslim organization in Canada, I don't know. Had something like that happened earlier on in October, it may have smothered, I think, what's become at this point an out-of-control situation.
If religious organizations here are not going to handle this, not going to take that leadership role, is it now on to government to do something here? We had Yves-François Blanchet, leader of the Bloc Québécois, on this program, and he tried to get it passed, right? He put it to a vote in the House of Commons to eliminate the religious exemption which exists in this country. If you do that, if you say the vilest things, but you can say, hey, it's in my good book, you're exempt from prosecution. And he tried to get the House of Commons to deal with it, and nobody wanted to take the bait here. So now that we've seen a failure from religious leaders, do we have to go to politicians to solve this mess?
Sure. And another thing I would say is that a lot of faith-based organizations, the Muslim Association of Canada, the National Council of Canadian Muslims, receive taxpayer dollars, receive grants from the federal government. And, I think it's on political leaders to take a good look at the patronage, take a good look at why they are actively engaging with these organizations that are not doing their part, I think, to maintain the bonds of interfaith civility, to exercise leadership, as you've said, toward maintaining religious pluralism in Canada.
Rahim, before I have to let you go, is there something out of the study and the work you did looking at this that we haven't touched on that you want to talk about this morning?
No, I think you've been pretty thorough. I mean, it wasn't a super fancy in terms of the methodology. Basically, I just looked at 10 of the leading Jewish organizations, 10 of the leading Muslim organizations, and was able to confirm the narrative that was already out there. So there was nothing super, methodologically sophisticated about the study, and I think you touched on the major points. Although I would encourage your listeners, if they're interested, to go to the Aristotle Foundation's website and take a look. It's available there for free, and they have a lot of great research on the website as well.
Rahim, catch you one day in Calgary. Thanks for coming on the air over the phone.
Looking forward to it.
Rahim Mohammed, freelance writer based in Calgary, and you can find his piece on the Aristotle Foundation for Public Policy website.